Hello, this is Arcades, and welcome to a bit of a Foundry video here. I thought I'd cover a little bit about power and, yeah, the difference of going from low voltage to high voltage and the things you need to consider and watch out for. So, as you can see right here, just a little bit of an intro. We got some of the basic power supply things here, so yeah. I'm going to be going over each of these and hopefully give you a better understanding of how it works. So yeah. So, hope you enjoy what you watch, hope you like what you see. If you do, remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment, helps out the channel immensely, and yeah, let's get into this. Okay, so, as it stands, in order to do this, we need to first define what some of the things are. Well, there are two types of power in the game. There's your low voltage and your high voltage. Your high voltage involves everything that's powered by sitting on blocks. Your building blocks. The building blocks, as of this video, is the only thing that can transfer low voltage power right now. So anything that sits on them will gain the power from the low voltage grid. Now, as it stands, there's only two devices, like I said, as of this video, that generate power on a low voltage grid. And that is the biomass burner and the burner generator. Now, the big differences here is that these can only power for the grid or the low voltage area they're sitting on. The advantage to this is that you can actually say you find an ignite. You can put these on, you can make a small platform, so to speak. Say you found a little spot you want to grab from. You can put these on there and allow these to power that area on their own without having to derive from your major grid network. You don't have to bring, you know, all these power lines over or such, but the thing is they still need to be powered, and they still have to bring it. They consume a fuel. In the case of biomass burner, it only consumes biomass, and as you can see right here, and I have some right there, which if I just go ahead and insert it here, as you can see, it's starting to run. Because right now, the only thing that's on this grid, when you go to hit this button, as you'll see, is power. Now if you want to shut them down so they don't consume, you can just hit this button right here and it'll disable the device. This is true for every device, but this is how you can get it to stop consuming. Now as you can see, it already burned one, so it's keeping that in there. This red bar shows you how much of the current item that was consumed is left. How many of the megajoules of that item is left. I'll go over that in a second, what that means. So if I hit the start, it will go through this. And these things throttle their output and their consumption rate based on the demand. So as you can see, the only thing I have going right now is this 5 kilowatts. That's all it's consuming right now. Even though this thing can generate 5, the only demand there is the 5 kilowatts, and as you see, there's this green bar right here. I will show you an actual working network that'll be a little bit more easy. That might be easier to understand and see something in actual action, but yeah. So you'll have this bar. This shows you the potential output of everything that's running, and it's only showing this biomass burner running for 5 kilowatts. So that's the local power sources. This bar shows you how much of that is actually being used, which is the 5 kilowatts. So it's all matching because it's only outputting what's needed to cover the one light pole. Okay, so the other one is the burner generator. Now, unlike the biomass generator, which can only consume biomass, the burner generator can consume anything that has a fuel value to it. So for example, I have 5 items right here. We have the Ignum ore rubble, Ignum fuel rod, portable fuel, biomass, and coked ignium. These 5 items all have a fuel value to them. You can see under the name. Now what this means is they produce a certain amount of energy. This value can be interpreted from the grid stats. If you come down here, it says technical notes. And at the very end, it says 1 watt is 1 joule per second. So for example here, you see this, it says you have light pole at 5 kilowatts. Well, that means, basically it's saying it needs that 5 kilowatts from the generator, but for the generator to supply that, it needs something to give it enough energy, which in the case of the fuel, it's going to need 5,000 joules. So, if the light pole needs 5,000 kilowatts, which means it's 5,000 watts, so 5,000 joules of energy, we have, say, for example, the Ignum ore rubble, that's 10 megajoules. So that's 10 million joules of energy. And the light's going to want 5,000 of that per second. And in the case here, this one's 100 million joules of energy, or 100 megajoules, and so on and so forth. And that's how it works. So when you go to insert this in here, these will automatically throttle the consumption to the demand given from the system. So in other words, if it only needs the 5,000 watts per second, that's how much it's going to consume. But if you've got a system that requires 2 megawatts of power, but this thing only produces 1.8. You're at 1.8 megawatts for its capacity, as listed here. You're going to see the maximum consumption rate of 1.8 megawatts, or 1.8 megajoules of energy per second. So in other words, that 10 million joules is going to get gone in less than 10 seconds. At max output. And those are the two generators for low voltage. And as I said, you will see we put something in here. Now, however, there's also one other thing. We have the Ignum fuel rod, which is 100 megajoules. You'll notice it says residual fuel rod casing. And you'll see right here, there's fuel. So what does that mean exactly? Well, if we put this in here, it consumed one and spat out a fuel rod casing. So as you can see, we now have basically a junk output. Now as you can see here also, it doesn't consume the fuel. It's there, but hasn't been consumed yet. Now, we have both of these here, so what happens if we were to turn both of them on? And as you can see, it distributes the load between both of these machines. I thought they would cut it in half, but apparently it does a little bit differently. Yeah, so anyways, but it does split the load between the machines so that the rate of consumption is more equal, I guess. Anyways, so keep that in mind, and this will happen with all the devices that produce power, is they will share the load and make it easier for them. And this goes for some of the other things we're about to talk to you about in a moment. So, okay, so now we're going to be talking about high voltage. High voltage overall is just I don't want to say like an upper level, but it's a different type of power that is shared between the higher producers and does not get transferred through the blocks. It has to be turned into low voltage by using a transformer, as we have here. We'll go over those in a moment, but yeah. So, generally all the high voltage is produced through means other than combustion right now, as it seems. This one's kind of a hybrid. But yes, right now the alternate sources of power, other than those burners, we have the steam turbine, which uses a boiler to give it steam. And as you can see, it basically, this consumes like different fuel values, like the like all those things that have the fuel value. This can manage, so you can put like the coked Ignum in it, and it'll generate. And put the fuel rods in there. That'll work too. And, you know, all these will work, as you can see. And what it does, it produces steam at a value of 360 liters a second, and it gets transferred over here to the turbine. Turbine, which requires a intake, or has a maximum intake of 360 liters a second. So, at full tilt, 1-to-1. Now here's the interesting thing. Now you remember how I just said about the throttling that these will do to power something? It happens with the turbines as well. So even though this thing says at max output, the max intake will be 3.6 liters a second. However, if you're only using half of that, these will be throttled back to half that consumption rate. And this is spread across the total value of them. So if you have 2 of these here, and you only have a demand of 3.6 megawatts, and you have 2 turbines out, guess what? One boiler could actually power both of them because their consumption of the steam is cut in half between the 2, because they only need half of it to power the system if it matches the 3.6, even though 2 can do like 7.2. I hope this makes sense. But either way, if the consumption of this is down, the consumption of the steam from this is down, and this will slow down as well, thus saving how much it consumes. So it is technically possible to power more than one turbine off of one boiler. However, if you're maxing out your turbines, then one boiler can only handle one turbine at max output. But if you're going less, then you can actually use less boilers to power more turbines. Okay, next on the list are these little puppies. These are the small solar panels. They're very cheap. They're very easy to make. I mean, at the time you unlock them, they're easy. You should have more than have everything needed to create them. And they have their big brother, the large solar panels. Now, the difference between these, the maximum output of a small solar panel is 300 kilowatts. Now its power output overall is dependent on the day, or the angle of the sun, so in other words, what time of day it is. The large solar panels are not dependent on the sun angle because you can see they follow the sun as it is. So their solar angle, which as you can see here, is only half on this one because that bar is showing the percentage of how much it's generating, will be full here because it's always facing, it's going to follow the sun for the max power. So the big advantage for these guys is, one, they do have an increased power output, but they are consistent. But they have a flaw, and I will get to that later. A flaw that these don't actually have, and can be used to take advantage of to create more power. So, I will go over that later, but basically they're very simple. However, the thing about these guys is you can't block the sun over them, or they refuse to work. So say I take a block, and I just put it right here. As you can say, its path to sun is blocked and it stops operating. So you can't put anything over these guys, or they stop working. Okay, so if you put a block in one particular spot, the large solar panel will get blocked from thing. But you remove this one block, it becomes fine. I believe it is over top, straight over the center of this. Did not expect that myself. Anyways, so Yeah, so these will be your green power sources if you do not want to create a system that consumes power. You can create your entire grid line around these things, these panels, or you can use, these to supplement power at small outposts, which may not be very important, so irregularities aren't an issue. Those are all the power producers. Now we need the pieces that help manipulate the power. These pieces are the the battery. We have the small battery here. We have the large battery here. Then we have the transformers. I have a small transformer sitting right here. And we have the large transformer sitting here. Now we go and look at these grid stats and you'll see this grid is just referring to all of these. Now, here's the thing, as you notice, so nobody says they're connected, these two islands are separate from the rest of this. These are also two separate grids. You have this panel, this battery, and this small transformer all on their own grid. And you can see this by this information. And as you can see, we have a light pole, we have the transformer, and then we have the high voltage grid displayed right here, which lists the power source, which is one small panel. Then we have the battery, which is, as you can see, this one right here. And then we have the transformer, as I mentioned earlier. And they will show them what they're all doing. In this case, we just have a light pole for 5 kilowatts. So these are throttling and such. Come over here. Again, high voltage grid. You can see. Now, the big thing you'll notice is, as I mentioned before, is we have this percentage bar right here. This bar is showing us how much of this thing's source it is taking. The max output is 650 kilowatts for the large panel. So this is only showing how much of that 650 it's using. Now, how this power is applied to low voltage grids, as I mentioned earlier, is these transformers. Now what the transformers do is, as it says, it pretty much just changes the high voltage grid to low voltage. It does not work in reverse. It does not go from low to high. So you cannot use these low ones to power up go up and then power up the battery. You can only use a high voltage source to charge batteries because they are high voltage. And pretty much the one way to identify something as high voltage is they will have this little structure somewhere on the building or on the structure. See, it's right there. Battery's head right there. Battery there. Panel there. And there. Can't see it up there, but that's a different story. So, now there's one thing about transformers they don't like. They don't like to share high voltage grids. What do I mean by this? Well, I take this block, put that there. Uh-oh, we got a short. As you can see, it says transformer short circuit is now disabled due to its underlying low voltage grid being connected to multiple different high voltage grids. All enabled transformers of the same low voltage grid must be connected to the same high voltage grid. Detached transformers of unwanted HVJs restart all button allows for quick reset of all short circuit transformers. You may also dismiss the message and restart the transformers manually. Note, this message will be shown until dismissed, even if the underlying issue is solved, to make you aware that this transformer is disabled. So we'll just dismiss the message because I want to show this. So as you can see, we have two high voltage grids. They're disabled, as it notes here. It don't like this. Now, to fix it in this case, all I gotta do is separate them, and it works. And we just reset it, restart that one, and you see they're all happy on their own little grids. Now, if I was to connect this to this, so they are now on the same grid, and I put this block here, you see they're happy. And you go to look, it's all combining together, and you see we got two panels, 2 batteries, 2 transformers, and the 2 light poles all together. I go and separate this. It now identifies it as 2 separate low voltage grids, but we're still connected as one high voltage grid. There's advantages to this and disadvantages to it, but for the most part, this allows you to split your sections apart. Now, say you want to disable the stuff in one area, but not another. You can actually just come up and shut down the transformer for that area, and it will no longer power that area. Because you can see, it's disabled. Come to the online one, it'll tell you the other ones shut down. Now, as you can see here, we have these 2 right here, and it shows 25 and shows 5 megawatts here. This is the maximum capacity of its ability to transform high voltage to low voltage. So, meaning that if you have, say, we have a 25 and a 5 here. If you have 30 megawatts of power, you're only going to get at max 25 megawatts out of it. Or same here, if you had like 20, you only get 5 out of it here. But however, what you can do, we join these 2 into the same grid. They combine together, and the total capacity of the transformer changing the high grid to low grid is now 30 megawatts. 25 for the large, 5 for the small. And you can stack them however you want. So you could have done like, 4 small ones, and that would have been 20. But as it stands, yes. So these bars will show you the rate at which stuff's there. I know I've only got the light poles, so it's hard to tell, kind of, because it's a lot easier to see it in action. Okay, now another thing I'd like to point out about high voltage stuff is you can see I have cables running through here. We have the small poles, and we have the large poles. Generally it's power pole 2. Now the thing about the power pole 2s is they have a much longer reach than power pole 1s. Like, well, how do I find out how far they are? Well, there's 2 things you got to understand about the power poles when it comes to high voltage systems. When you hover over the tooltip for each building, you'll notice, see, like here it says power pole small, and you look down and it says high voltage grid, power type conveyor, connection range 16 meters, max connections 5. What I'm looking at and talking about is the connection range. That's 16 meters. So when you go to put it down, this will connect 16 meters to the next pole. For the largest, it says connection range is 45 meters. Now, here's where things get a little weird, and this can actually confuse some people. We're now going to look at the large solar panel. It has a connection range of 10 meters. So, if you wanted to connect a pole to this, this only has a connection range of 10 meters, even though this has 16. Because this one is shorter, it bases the range off of it. So, whatever building has the shorter range is the one that it goes by. So you can see, the shortest it looks from all the ones I have here is 10 meters. Pretty much everything is 10 meters except for the turbine, and I think... yeah, pretty much a turbine. Turbine is 15 meters. Everything else is 10 meters except for the power poles, which are 16, 45, and 14, respectively. Now, the number of connections refers to how many things can hook up to that thing, and obviously the large poles have way more than what the small could do. Small does 5, large does 10, but however, large only has, or small buildings generally only have a reach of 10 meters, which as you can see is about to right here. So keep that in mind when you're going to pick out your buildings, is that the range of the smaller building is the one that it abides by, because it's smaller. Okay, now here's something I was wanting to address about the small solar panels versus the large solar panels. Here's the thing. When you look at these things, the large solar panel is a 5x5. Which is, that's 25 squares. Small solar panels are only 3x3, which means 9. For one extra length and one extra width, you can have a formation of 4. In this manner, sitting right here. Or, if you just want to care about the total number, 3 of these, which is 9 times 3, will be 27 panels, or 27 squares. That's only 2 more squares of space taken versus this. With that being said, the output of 650 is too low for this. And versus the output of 4 or even 3 is greater than the output of one of these large ones. Even with the unstable sun angles that these will go through. What I'm trying to say is that in the total course of one day, so in other words, from sun up, they both start at 15-degree angle, absorbing power, that until the end of the day, when they are no longer absorbing any power, when they're no longer getting electricity, these solar panels will actually will generate more power in one day, or equal to what one large solar panel can do, being at max power all day long. And thus, making these actually kind of useless to use as of the point of this video. In case they get buffed later, hey, they do. Then so what I'm going to do to show you in a little experiment right now is night. As you can see on the clock, it is currently 00 midnight basically. I'm going to hook these up. I'm going to let them charge these batteries over the course of the night, and we're going to see how much total electricity comes from a single day's worth of power. Now, as you can see, these are each on their own grid. They're completely empty from the start, seeing as it's day. sun angle, and it says valid angle from 15 degrees to 165, and we're at 262 right now. So as soon as it hits 15, valid angle 15 to 165, these will power up and start charging. Okay, so it's now nighttime. You can see, no longer producing power, no longer producing power. The one large solar panel, 548.6 megajoules stored on the battery. 3 small solar panels, 608.17 megajoules. So for 2 more total spots, space is taken by these small ones have produced about a little bit more power and over the course of a day total than the large did. And if I had 4 with the idea that, you know, it's only 1 block wider and 1 block wider and 1 block longer than a large solar panel, that is even better. So for the time being, I suggest, unless they buff these, like I said, later on, after the video is made, that really, I wouldn't worry about using large solar panels to build a power farm with. Just use the smalls. And if you're worried about the constant power flow, that really gets negated after the first night when you get the batteries, because the batteries will stabilize the small ones. And at that point, that feature of that is pretty moot and pointless. So, and yeah. Alright, now, let's actually look at a factory that has some of this installed and look at it as an example power grid. Okay, so I'm over here at, this is the factory I'm currently building and on stream over on twitch.tv, this is Arcades Test. This is a functional factory. It is doing its thing. So I thought what I'd do is give a free showing of what the power grid looks on mine. So like I said, pretty much any facility you can just walk up to where it says grid stats, click on that. So as you can see here, I've got 4 steam turbines according to this, and that is showing you how much is available by the thing. Now this bar right here is showing you how much of the capacity that these have that it's currently using. Now these are at 3.6, so 3.6 times 4, which should be 14.4 megawatts available to me. So I'm using about a third of my capacity with just steam turbines. Now you'll notice I have 2 low voltage grids. Now these 2 grids, one is my current facility that I am standing at, and one is the smaller facility, which is actually where the steam turbines reside at. So, which shows, you know, the 2 drone miners, all the loaders, the light poles that I have there, and it shows you how much power it's consuming in that area. Here, it's showing the low voltage grid in this area, and it's showing you the different power sources too. Because not only do I have, you know, the steam turbines, I have the burner generators. They're sitting there as backups because they're throttled down because they don't need to, because the high voltage grid is supplying the power to these. And it'll list all the machines and what the total consumption of power they are currently using at any given point. You can see I've got like 311 loaders here with what I have alone. And you can see what's being used here. This bar is referring to the power locally. So if this drops below what this is capable of doing, then this will actually start kicking in, and you'll see the burner generators providing power to make up the difference for what's lacking from the high voltage. And as you can see, I've also we've got the transformers here. We've got 1 transformer over in that facility supplying the power, because it's taking it straight from the high voltage to power all this. But then we also have 4 small generators to provide power to this place, and I shouldn't need to replace that for a while. Probably the next upgrade I'll do is just changing it to a large transformer so that, you know, it's just 1 building instead of, you know, 4 structures as it is now. I guess the only other thing to note about power is there's kind of a hierarchy of what it will consume first. So in this hierarchy on how things are consumed, if we come to here, you notice that each of these have, you know, they have the light being consumed. We have fully charged batteries, and we have active solar panels. But when we go to look at the system, you notice that the batteries are not outputting electricity, but we have the solar panels providing. So it is taking power from the active power sources first, then it'll do the batteries, then it will go to the low voltage power generators. So like the biomass burners and such. Because if I was to disconnect, these right here, and then we go look, thing you'll notice it says the batteries will say -10. So if the batteries are losing power, they will say -10. If they're charging, they will give you a positive number next to there. As in this manner right here. See, it's getting charged at 650 kilowatts. Now it will charge after it fills the capacity of what's here. So if I was to turn this... Oh wait, light is on. So if I was to add a transformer to this platform here, as you can see, it's powering the 5 kilowatts, and then there's 645 kilowatts left over going to the batteries. Okay, that should cover the basic mechanics of the power in the game. I guess quick review. Your low power voltage units, power units are right here. Use these to power straight onto the low voltage blocks, which carry the power for all the structures. You can tell what something needs on low and high pressure because, or low or high voltage grid, because it says it right at the bottom of the description of the tooltips of what it needs to run. If it doesn't have it, most likely it'll take fuel consumption, which are all listed here. Which again, that's mainly for the burner generator and the boiler. And yeah, so transformers are like the only ones that cross both, because the transformer changes the high voltage to the low voltage. Your low voltage involves your higher power sources and your power generation, such as the steam turbines, solar panels, batteries, and such. Anything new that gets added down the line. And you use, like I said, the transformers to change it from high to low. They each have their own capacity, and the capacity is cumulative for more transformers you place down. So, yeah, and just make sure you don't short circuit your transformers by crossing multiple high voltage grids onto the same low voltage grid. So, that was a mouthful. Alright, so, hope you enjoyed what you watched. Hope you liked what you saw. If you did, you know the deal, you know the spiel. This is Arcades, signing out. Have yourself a good day. Whee!